Hello and welcome back to another episode of Blame It on Marketing. It is season 5, we can't believe it. And we have a wonderful, wonderful guest with us today to talk about social selling as a salesperson and whether that's going to be the future of salespeople. But without further ado, I'll let Tom Boston introduce himself.
Hello to you both. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. And as a quick introduction, my name is Tom Boston, as you said, brand awareness manager at Salesloft. Been at Salesloft for about 4 years now, just over 4 years. Started on the sales team and have now joined the marketing team. And I get to do all the fun stuff around kind of branding and social. Get to make great videos and podcasts, and also get to meet great people like yourself and speak about kind of what Salesloft does. I'm also really big on social selling, so we've already touched on there. Used it as a seller myself, kind of back in the day, and now I get to train not only the Salesloft team but other teams about how they can implement some of the strategies that worked for me as a seller.
That's awesome. And like one of the reasons why we wanted to do this episode, Tom, and wanted to do it with you, obviously naturally because you've kind of gone on that journey, you've crossed over into the marketing team from sales, so you know what you're talking about here. But for a lot of marketers out there, this is a huge friction point because we are at this sort of like maybe tipping point, I think, with sales and marketing where the sales teams are kind of becoming their own sort of mini marketers, sort of mini influencers, depending on what sort of sector you work in, especially in B2B. And we work with a lot of marketing teams that have this sort of it kind of goes one way or the other. You either get salespeople who are really up for doing this and really want to kind of sell themselves and sell the product through, social media, or you kind of get the opposite where they're like, absolutely not. We want marketing to write all of our content for us. We want you guys to kind of do it all, and you can just use our profile. So well, I guess just to start with, this is not exactly a spicy question, but why do you think some salespeople kind of have the idea that social selling is something that marketing should kind of do for them rather than do themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of salespeople have that mindset of, well, I'm a salesperson, right? I'm here to sell. Give me a phone and give me a product or a service, and I'll just do the kind of old school way, right? Because maybe I've got the gift of the gab, or maybe I think I'm a charming salesperson, or maybe I'm a little bit snaky and I can trick people into, getting them to give me some money, whatever that might be. Like I hate that mindset, and I think it's just so dated. So for me, when I joined Salesloft, I saw a huge opportunity to harness the power of social because I was already doing a lot of things that might be social friendly anyway as part of the sales process. So I was sending people personalized videos, right? My emails were full of things like humor, right? Because I understood, well, that's probably the kind of stuff I would reply to. And I decided to then bring that to life on social. If using social media as part of the process is something that you think belongs to marketing, I would challenge right back and be like, you're probably a seller from about 20 years ago who thinks that salespeople use a telephone and marketing create the adverts, and that's how kind of business works. But it's things have changed. The game has changed, and we need to play it differently.
So speaking of the fact that kind of Emma mentioned, it's actually we think it's a little bit of a tipping point, and you saying the game has changed. What do you think that will look like? Because we're seeing whole companies built off of LinkedIn influencers, and they're doing really well. How do you see that going? On an individual level of literally salespeople being able to do their job in the future.
Yeah, well, I think it's about empowering salespeople, right? And many sellers would feel scared of creating content, for example, like what do I post, or what if I say it wrong? These companies that you speak about who are kind of getting it right, who are built on LinkedIn influencers, they're empowering the team to have a voice, to have an opinion, to be an interesting person to follow on the platform. Like, I know it sounds so crazy, but salespeople are not often attributed to being interesting, right? You know, you don't often say that salesperson so interesting. They were, you know, I really got captivated by. They might have been you know, a good seller, and they had the ability to sell in a certain way, but you don't often say, "Oh, I loved their take," or "I loved their opinion on X, Y, Z." I think that the teams that are winning are empowering sellers to have that opinion and empowering the team to have that voice and show them that it does matter, and that actually in a world of, you know, robots and very real robots that are you know, sending out these messages, being interesting, being different, sounding like you have an opinion, like these are all things that sellers need to have to stand out and to win, you know.
I find that really fascinating because I think, you know, a few years ago there was some HubSpot research that they did where it was basically like, especially when you're selling B2B SaaS, at the top you had word of mouth referrals and recommendations as the thing that people trust when they are trying to buy SaaS. And then it was like all the marketing content, and right down the bottom, I think it was like 23% of people or something trust the salesperson. Do you think that's also shifting in line with people getting online and being more interesting and having a bit more of a voice, would you say? Do you see that in conversations you have?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we know from the data that buyers are doing more research than ever. They're spending more time on the website. They're also spending more time researching the salesperson, right? I don't know about you, but the first thing I do when someone reaches out to me is I'll just jump onto their profile and see if they practice what they preach, right? Let's kind of scroll through the last 5, 10 posts, and prospects are doing that. Buyers are doing that right now. And I think that if you are active and you are bringing to life the problems that you solve for, and you are talking about the solutions as well, that's when the kind of seller trust is gonna come up that scale, and we're going to see that a little bit more, right? So you're not just a person who's redirecting people over to a website, or here's what some marketing folk think, right? You're actually going, well, this is my opinion, and check out these posts that I've written, right? I make videos about the stuff that I'm sending you in your email inbox, right? I just wrote an article about the voicemail that I left you about XYZ. It's all these things that give you credibility as a seller. And we didn't have access to these things years ago. You know, and that's why I believe that kind of that stat is right at the bottom there, that kind of that seller importance. But actually, as the resources grow and we have the ability to build brands, personal brands, I think that number is going to increase for the sellers that get it right.
It's I think I think that's totally true, but also I think both us and you are in fortunate positions where our buyer persona or our audience are us. So in that sense we're like extremely lucky because we can just talk to what we do and how we work and all of those things. How do you think a person who's, let's say, a seller whose buyer audience isn't salespeople can do that with the same amount of credibility?
Yes, yes, is my short answer, because the amount of people who will say to me, "Well, my buyer's not on LinkedIn," right? Or "It's all right for you, Tom, because you sell to salespeople, and salespeople love LinkedIn, so it's easy for you." And I'm always thinking, well, you know, a lot of my success would come from me emailing someone a LinkedIn post, right? They don't have to be on LinkedIn to see that post. It might be me sending a video to someone that I'd made for LinkedIn originally, right? But maybe I'm just directly sending that to someone because I think that's going to be of kind of relevance to them. So when we talk about like credibility and selling to people who might not necessarily be kind of in our space, you as a seller building a brand that's visible to everyone, right? And they can see that just from a small little bit of research. They might jump onto your, I was going to say Twitter profile, but I better say X profile, which sounds a bit strange, but they, you know, they might jump onto your X profile, or they might see what you're saying on Instagram. Like that kind of research piece is massive, especially if you've got your social links in your outbound prospecting. So I think, you have to meet your buyer wherever they are. Like, of course you do, but actually being active on social platforms can only be a good thing. And you don't have to just create content and hope it gets seen. You can create content, send it to people. I used to do that all the time and saw a lot of success from doing it.
It's awesome. And on the flip side of that, so obviously we can see it's working. We work with quite a few businesses who are kind of invested in this and who are really happy. I guess not just with salespeople, but actually across the board, trying to showcase their people as sort of experts in their own field and in their own right, which, as we've sort of said, naturally then brings kind of like integrity to what you're doing, and you sort of feel like you're in safe hands. But why do you think so many companies are kind of still so against that, or want to kind of like almost control what it is that the person puts out? Because that's the flip side of it all, isn't it?
It's probably fear. Like, the simple answer is that they're kind of scared, and we all have these horror stories of someone who put something on social media, got on a plane, and by the time they landed, they'd been fired because it had gone viral, or they said the wrong thing. But actually, like, common sense is a really big thing, and I think that, like, if you're working for a company who are hiring people who don't have that kind of that common sense, then maybe don't empower them, right? Maybe don't empower them to build a brand. Maybe just get them to do something else. But I feel like if you are in an organization where you've got like-minded individuals, you're all on the same page, you've been through an onboarding process that puts everyone on a level of understanding, then you've got the confidence to empower people to go, okay, now go and have your opinion. My gauge, I always have a kind of gauge, because I do a lot of comedy. I always say to myself before I post anything, does it add value? Is it kind? That's something that my wife taught me, and God bless her for that, because that's helped me in my life massively, and I have it right up there. And yeah, of course, like, is it something that feels like it might be shared by the company? And if it doesn't hit those, then it doesn't get posted. And I think that's a good rule of thumb. If you're creating content and you are unsure, would it get reposted by my corporate channel? If you read it back and go, no, it wouldn't, it's probably not appropriate. It's probably not a good idea to post it. So there are a couple of things you can start thinking about to set you up for success with stuff like that.
What do you think about companies that just literally do not allow their people to post on LinkedIn, but then in the next breath will expect everybody to like and share their corporate LinkedIn posts? Because they to me are the worst offenders.
Yes, everyone needs to reshare the blog, but if you put something that's a little bit out there, or you share the wrong message that's been told to get deleted, yeah, I think it's just a broken way of thinking, and it goes back to my point that if you don't trust your team, and you don't think that they've got the kind of common sense to have the right tonality on the platform, then yeah, you're gonna fall down straight away. But I can certainly relate to that. Yeah, everyone's got to like this, everyone's got to share this, but yeah, don't say the wrong thing. It always makes me smile.
Yeah, don't say anything don't say anything that's not on brand either, which is just, to me, that's just next level. On the flips, again, another sort of maybe flip side of this, what about salespeople? Just crossed my mind. What about salespeople who just don't want to actually do this stuff?
Well, when you say don't want to do it, do you mean sellers who fundamentally disagree with social selling, or is it the ones who maybe are too lazy to do so? Because that's a different question, really.
I think probably maybe it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on both.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the lazy ones. It's so easy to be lazy in sales because there's loads to do, right? And it's really difficult, and you want all of your actions to kind of attribute to a result. That's what salespeople like. We like to do things and go, okay, I've done X, Y, Z, and then this is my prize at the end. That's basically sales. If you're too lazy to do it, if you think, oh, okay, no, I can't really be bothered, it probably ties into the first one, that you've not understood the value, right? Because you don't have that kind of frame of reference. Like, the only reason you would be lazy is because you didn't understand the first one, which is, well, why? What's the why? And that's what I try to help people out with massively, right? And salespeople's ears normally pick up when I start talking about things like inbound leads. And certainly as an outbound seller, that was a real penny drop moment for me when I started to get inbound leads on LinkedIn as a result of my personal brand. And I always remember saying to my wife, I've cracked it. I've cracked the system. I've been working at this now for, like, I think it was about 6 months, 8 months in, and I suddenly started to have a steady stream of people coming into my DMs who'd want to have a conversation about Salesloft. And as an outbound seller, this was like, the golden egg. I was like, this is fantastic. But sellers who don't want to get on board, they probably don't understand that future state. They probably don't understand that actually taking some time, creating a brand, jumping on video, whatever it might be, isn't for likes and shares and being an influencer. I mean, that was never my goal. I still laugh at the word, right? That wasn't important to me. I wanted to hit my target. And when you start talking in those kind of terms, that's when sellers start to listen, because sellers go, oh yeah, I want to hit my target. That's a huge focus for me right now. Okay, good. Well, now we can talk about personal branding, and now we can talk about social selling. It's not going to affect you right now. Don't get me wrong. In fact, probably for the first 3 months, it's going to be terrible. And you'll look back at that early content and be like, wow, that's all over the place. But actually, it's the seller in 12 months, 18 months who will thank you for that consistency, and will thank you for that kind of that voice that you've built.
So what are some of the ways that, if you're not yet doing any social selling, you can kind of dip your toe and start to, I guess, build skills as well? Because it's not like we're all just capable of creating really great, funny content and know how to film and edit and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I often say that to people, right? It's easy to look at influencers on the platform, see what they're doing, and go, okay, I'm just going to kind of recreate that. And if you looked at my content, you'd be like, okay, I have to make funny videos. I need to buy a flat cap, and I need to start writing sketches, right? But you've got to do what works for you. The reason I bring comedy into my content is because it's been a huge part of my life for a long time. I've always enjoyed making people laugh. I've always enjoyed comedy in general, right? Did a drama degree many, many, many years ago, right? So I've got those kind of soft skills of things like writing and performing. So that seemed like an obvious one to me. But if we're talking about sellers dipping their toe in, like, for me, that's a good analogy, because if you dip your toe in, you just want to get a feel for the water. And that would be a huge thing that I would recommend people do. Just try different things, get a feel for the water, right? Write an article, see how it feels, create a meme, try a carousel, right? Do a text post that adds some value. Take what you're sending in your outbound emails and try to bring that to life on social. Jump onto your company website, take a blog, write it in your own terms, find something that you solve for, tell that story, take a selfie. There's so many things that you can do, right, that might not give you a result straight away, but you're having a go and you're trying things. And my kind of story to that was, the only reason I leaned into comedy is I made a funny video and it went viral. And the penny dropped for me, okay, maybe I'll do more of that, right? The audience kind of told me what kind of content I should be making. So yeah, dipping your toe in is all about trying different things, seeing what works, seeing what hits, seeing what lands, and then doing more of that.
Wise advice. I mean, it's what we do in marketing, right? All the time, is that we experiment with stuff and then we test it and we learn and we see what we get back from the audience. So it's really, I guess it's also sort of maybe applying some of those basic marketing principles, but to your sales content. And on that thread, where do you think marketing's place in all this comes, Tom? Like, is there stuff that we should be doing to help you guys or can do? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that, you have to work together. And I've made content myself about that, the rift between sales and marketing. But I very much see myself as a bridge. Having worked on both sides, I kind of get to see both both stories. And I think it's about working together. And again, it sounds so cliche, but it really is, right? How can the marketing team prompt the sales team with things like content? And I spoke about it a little bit there, right? Not just giving them a blog, but actually giving them a theme, right? Giving them an idea of how they could create content that complements the marketing material that's being put out. And it's not a huge leap, right? If you've got a piece of marketing material, you've probably already thought out the themes. You've probably already thought out the value, right? You've probably got a couple of talk tracks in there. It's about helping salespeople to go, okay, well, I've actually broken it down for you. So don't just share the content. Actually, we'd love to get your input here. Or what would your take be on this quote, right? Because again, I'm the first one to admit, salespeople don't have the time. We don't have a lot of time. We got a lot of things to do during the day, right? So the easier we can make it, the better. It's something I do with the team at Salesloft. I've got a small team who are also building their brands, and I will help them out. I'll create prompts. I will create little snippets and ideas of kind of content creation. I won't tell them what to write. I don't give them it word for word, but I'll say, here you go. Here's the path. Now you go down that path and try to create something, see what works for you.
I think one thing that we've learned through the podcast, and I think what sounds like what's happening with you guys is the importance of accountability. I think if you're by yourself and you're just doing this as yourself, and you kind of don't have anyone to keep you accountable, and you kind of know for the first 6 to 12 months not much is going to happen, it can be really hard in the midst of your normal job to stay consistent and keep posting and keep doing those things. But it sounds like you've kind of almost built a little accountability group where you all are, this is our goal, we're working on our social profiles, and Tom knows how to do it, so he's going to help us, but also we're all there and we can all check in on each other. Do you think that's a big part of also making sure that you're successful in doing it? Because anyone can kind of start, but I guess the people that do this well, they keep going, right?
Yeah, I mean, having the will and the drive to keep going is a massive element of it. Having the support to do it, again, so important to have that group. But the biggest thing I took away there was that word accountability. And it made me think of my first video. My very first video, I looked into my phone camera and I said, I'm going to do this every week. I'm going to make a video every week about sales. I don't know where it's going to go, but this is the first one, and let's see where we go. That was 4 years ago, and I've been doing it every week since. So, like, accountability is massive. I think one of the reasons I did it is because I knew that if I didn't kind of tell people that's what I was going to do, then I probably wouldn't do it. I might try it, and if it doesn't go well, I'll stop doing it. But actually, yeah, that accountability piece and kind of standing up and at least telling someone, because I knew my team would see it at least, right? Telling someone that this is something I'm going to do, it helps you to be held accountable.
Definitely. I do want to talk about like what leadership could do, but I'm also interested in terms of when people are now hiring new salespeople. Do you think this is something that like companies are looking at, like the profile that the salesperson has, not just then, because traditionally it would be like, did you hit your numbers, blah 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 blah, blah, show us some evidence that you did that. Do you feel like now it's going to either it is part of the conversation of hiring salespeople, or will be more of a thing in the future?
I think it's being looked at more and more, and certainly, I mean, I'm sometimes part of the interview process at Salesloft, right? So if I know I've got an interview with someone in the afternoon, I'll jump onto their profile and just see what they're kind of talking about, right? Same thing with if someone's trying to sell me something, it's just learning about someone's background. And again, I think, traditionally in the interview process, it was up to you to kind of sell yourself. But now we're in this amazing position where we can create a back catalogue of kind of success stories, and that's not sharing how great you are, but it's actually going, look, here here I am being a voice for my product or service, or here I am being really active in the community that I serve. It just helps potential employers understand that you're switched on. I think is the best way to put it. That you're not just kind of taking any job and just going through the motion and just kind of hitting target and going home and switching off. You're actually kind of all in. Like when I joined Salesloft, I very much was all in. I thought this is the role for me. I was so thrilled to get the job, and I really unpacked. That's the analogy I always talk. I unpacked my stuff. I was like, I'm staying here for a while, and that really helped me kind of finding a voice and building a brand, because I knew I was going to be there kind of long term. The question I often get asked is, what if I build a brand and I want to leave, or what if I change organizations? Again, for me, it can only be a good thing. If you're being a voice and being really active, you can show employers, look, this is what I do for my current employer. Before I worked at Salesloft, I was working for a housing company, right? It was housing software. My content was all about kind of social housing, not very sexy, but I was able to pivot that quite easily. And I think that, again, don't be worried about that. Just have a voice, because it could be something that really affects your career, and it could be something that people pick up on and see, and help you massively.
Last question, I think, from us, maybe. We spoke about kind of what can salespeople do, what can marketing do, and then the last kind of group of people I think we always need to address is what leaders can do to help support salespeople who do want to, get into social selling and get into having their own brands.
From a leader perspective, you've got to lead by example. I think that's so crucial, right? How can you expect your sales team to have a voice and to kind of talk about the organization if you're not kind of doing it yourself? So I think that's a huge one. Lead by example. But I also think it's about offering support and being there for the team. It's so crucial that people have someone to go, look, I don't really know what I'm doing, right? Or I don't feel comfortable doing it. Having an open understanding and having an organization and a leadership team where you feel like you can come to them, that's going to help massively as well. It's going to allow you to go, right, okay, yeah, I've got a leadership team that I can talk to. But no, the best thing is to just, be the Pied Piper, just go out there and do it, and have your team kind of follow by example. At Salesloft, that was huge for me, right? My manager at the time used to work at LinkedIn, and he was very active on the platform, and that helped me to go, okay, look, yeah, I've kind of feel more comfortable to do it, because I'm in a place where it's so important to leadership, and it really empowered me. So yeah, can't expect your team to do it if you're not doing it, but also have an open door, tell them that they can speak to you about it any time, so they can learn and grow.
I think as well, maybe if it's not directly your boss that's, I don't want to say encouraging you, but if your boss is encouraging you, but they're not the one to do it, maybe there's somebody else in the organization that is doing it, and potentially you could have conversations with them as well, because there'll be someone somewhere with a profile usually. So yeah, maybe seek out that person potentially.
Yeah, I think it's what good salespeople do, right? They find out what's working for other people, and they kind of use those skills. I joined a company years ago, and there was someone who was hitting their target. You know, they were right at the top of the leaderboard. So the first thing I did is just to spend some time with this person, right? Just tell me what you're doing, right? Give me 10 minutes just to kind of break it down. And if you've got someone in your organization who is succeeding on the platform, learn from them. My top tip would be, don't reach out to strangers to pick their brains. That's a huge pet peeve of mine. If someone just, oh, can I just have kind of 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to pick your brains, ask you some questions? Like, you've got to have that mutual value add. And I often speak about that. If someone reaches out to me and wants to kind of pick my brains, I won't immediately direct them to my consultation website and, you know, ask them to book in some time. But we might have a mutual understanding of, okay, well, you know, what would be the value to me if we jump on and we have that conversation? What am I going to get back in return? And I think if you lead with that and you have some value to give, you've got that good kind of mutual success going on.
Also, don't pick my brains. That sounds painful. I don't want anyone to pick my brains.
No, someone sounds like a zombie, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly.
Awesome. So we always like to finish up, Tom, with asking you if there's anything we should have asked you that we didn't already.
Should have asked me that you didn't. Oh, there's a question. I feel like that's a good interview question. Well, you didn't ask me how the weather is where I am, and as a salesperson, you know, has it been a successful conversation if we've not talked about the weather? So I think you might
as
have
a British salesperson.
As a British salesperson, so I'll you know, I'll put you out your misery. It's overcast.
Oof.
Oof. You're just that bit further up north than me, so yeah, you know. Okay, so we failed. We're not going to quit marketing and become salespeople. So we will end things there. So thank you so much, Tom. I think it's just important to reiterate quickly your gauge for everybody if they didn't pay attention to that. And I'm going to try and get it right. So do stop me if I get it wrong, Tom, which was to make sure that you're kind with your posts, that you kind of, you know, you make sure you have your own voice and that you try things out and you experiment, and that you wouldn't post anything that your company corporate page wouldn't also post. Did I get that right? Did I miss anything?
No, that sounds good to me. Yeah.
Maybe I will quit my job then. Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Tom. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you for the next episode soon, everybody.